What would you do if a cop looked you dead in the eye right now and said, "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle"? Most drivers freeze up, comply immediately, and hand over every single right they legally have. And they do it all in the first 30 seconds without even realizing it. That one moment, that one conversation, can turn a simple broken taillight stop into a search, an arrest, and a conviction you never saw coming. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could be the difference between driving away clean or sitting in the back of a patrol car. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and I found 4 words, just 4 words, that completely change how a traffic stop plays out. Cops do not want you knowing this, and that is exactly why you need to watch every second of this video. Here's what you're about to learn. First, I'm going to give you the exact 4 words that force an officer to state and record their legal basis on body cam, right there in the moment. Second, I'm going to show you 3 more tactics built around those words that create a legal wall around you before the stop even escalates. Third, I'm going to walk you through a real traffic stop scenario, the wrong way and the right way, so you can see the difference crystal clear. And fourth, I'm going to back all of this up with real court cases translated into plain English, so you know this is 100% legal and not just something I made up on the internet. This matters more than most people realize. You think a traffic stop is just a ticket, maybe a warning. A couple minutes on the side of the road and then you're back on your way. But here's the reality. Police officers are trained to use the first 2 minutes of a stop to build a reason to investigate you further. They're listening to how you speak, watching how your hands move, looking at the seat behind you, checking your eyes. They are building a case in real time whether you have done anything wrong or not. And the average driver has no idea this is happening because nobody ever taught them how any of this actually works. Most people have no idea that the moment you say the wrong thing, or even say nothing when you should say something specific, you've already started losing. Your silence is not protection. Your politeness is not protection. Only your words, the right words, said at the right moment, give you real legal protection. And the 4 words I'm about to give you are the starting point for all of it. The first tactic is built around those 4 words. Here's exactly what you say. What is your legal basis? 4 words. Short, calm, direct. You look at the officer when they begin to push past the routine stop, and you say clearly and without anger, "Officer, what is your legal basis?" That is it, word for word. Memorize those 4 words right now. Here's why this is so powerful. When you say those 4 words, a few things happen at once. The officer now knows you understand your rights. That alone changes the dynamic immediately. More importantly, every word the officer says after that is being recorded on body cam. And now they have to actually state a legal reason for whatever they are doing or asking. If they want to extend the stop, they need reasonable suspicion. If they want to search your car, they need probable cause. Those are legal standards. They are not optional. They exist because of the 4th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And when you ask for the legal basis out loud on camera, you are forcing the officer to either provide that justification or back off. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Rodriguez versus United States, decided in 2015, the Supreme Court ruled that officers cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time needed to complete the original purpose of the stop without having reasonable suspicion of a separate crime. That means if they pulled you over for speeding, they cannot just keep you there fishing for something else. They need a reason. And when you ask, what is your legal basis? You are forcing them to name that reason on camera in real time. Bad way. Most drivers say nothing and just sit there while the officer asks question after question, extending the stop for 10, 15, 20 minutes with no legal justification ever stated. Then the search happens, then the arrest happens. And in court, there's no record of the officer failing to justify the extension because nobody ever asked. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, what is your legal basis?" Immediately when the stop starts going beyond the routine. The officer either states a valid reason that is now recorded or they cannot, and the stop ends. Either way, you have protected yourself and created a record. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court. When body cam footage shows an officer unable to clearly state their legal basis after being asked directly, that footage becomes your defense. It shows the jury or the judge that the officer was operating without proper legal foundation. That is the power of 4 words said calmly on camera. Have you ever been in a traffic stop that felt like it was going way too long? Drop a comment below right now and tell me what happened, because I read every single one. The second tactic builds directly on the first. And once you've asked for the legal basis and the stop continues, you need to clearly separate yourself from consent. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Say it once, say it calmly, say it clearly. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Those 9 words are a legal wall around your vehicle. Here's the reality that most people get wrong. A lot of drivers think that if a cop searches your car and finds nothing, it doesn't matter whether you consented or not. That thinking will get you in serious trouble. Consent to a search does two things that hurt you badly. First, it removes your Fourth Amendment protection entirely. Any evidence found during a consented search is fully admissible in court, no matter how the officer behaved during the search. Second, it tells the officer right then that you are someone they can push around, and they will keep pushing. Watch what happens when you clearly state no consent. The officer now has to decide their next move without your cooperation. If they have probable cause, they can still search. But now they have to articulate that probable cause on camera clearly before touching anything. If they do not have probable cause, they legally cannot search your car. Full stop. And if they search anyway, that becomes an unlawful search, and any evidence they find may be thrown out of court entirely. This is backed by Schneckloth v. Bustamonte, a Supreme Court case from 1973 that established that a person can voluntarily consent to a search. And if they do, the search is legal even without a warrant. But the flip side of that ruling is the critical part. No consent means no warrantless search without another legal basis. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection. A verbal non-consent statement made on camera is one of the most powerful things a driver can put on record. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I don't have anything to hide," or just shrug when asked if the officer can look around. That is consent. Even a shrug can be interpreted as consent. Then the search happens, and now you've lost all protection. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches," clearly and directly. The officer hears it, the body cam records it, and every action they take after that has to have its own legal justification completely separate from your cooperation. Former police officers have confirmed this works. When an officer hears clear non-consent from a driver who is calm and specific about it, they know that driver is legally informed. That changes how they proceed. They become more careful, more deliberate, more likely to end the stop if their basis is weak. The third tactic is about detention. This is where most traffic stops either end cleanly or spiral completely out of control. And the way it goes depends on whether you know this next question. Here's exactly what you say. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Ask it calmly. Ask it directly. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? That is the question that forces a legal decision on camera right then and there. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Officers can make a traffic stop feel like you have no choice but to stay and talk and answer every question. But legally, there are only two situations you can be in at any moment during that stop. You are either being detained, meaning they have reasonable suspicion and are legally holding you, or you are free to leave. There is no legal middle ground. When you ask this question, you force the officer to pick one of those two boxes and say it out loud on camera. Watch what happens when you ask this clearly. If the officer says you are free to leave, you thank them, roll up your window, and drive away. The stop is over. If they say you're being detained, you now know the stop has escalated legally, and everything that happens from that point needs to meet reasonable suspicion. This is rooted in Terry v. Ohio, one of the most important Fourth Amendment cases in history, decided by the Supreme Court in 1968. That case established that an officer can briefly detain someone if they have reasonable suspicion that a crime is occurring, but it also established that the detention must be justified. Asking whether you are detained or free to leave directly triggers that legal standard. The officer cannot just say, "I don't know yet," or just hang tight. They have to answer. Bad way. Most drivers stand next to their car answering question after question, never realizing they could have asked this and left 10 minutes ago. The officer keeps talking. The driver keeps answering. And the stop turns into a 30-minute interrogation with no legal basis ever stated. Good way. Smart drivers ask, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" At the first moment, the stop goes beyond the routine. The officer answers. The driver knows where they stand, and the body cam records everything. Most people have already clicked away from this video. If you're still here, you are already in the top 10% of drivers when it comes to knowing your rights. Drop a comment right now that says, "I'm still here," because the next part is the most important section of everything I've taught you today. The fourth tactic ties all three of the others together, and it works like a lock on everything you've said. Here's exactly what you say at the very end of any stop that felt even slightly uncomfortable. For the record, I want to state clearly that I have not consented to any search. I have not waived any rights, and I am complying under protest. Say that to the officer while looking directly at the body cam. Every single word is recorded. This matters because compliance is not the same as consent. You have to follow lawful orders during a traffic stop. Refusing a direct order can get you charged with obstruction. But complying does not mean you agree that the stop was legal. Stating out loud that you are complying under protest preserves your ability to challenge everything in court later. Listen closely because this is critical. This tactic only works if you have already used the other three. The legal basis question, the non-consent statement, the detention question, those three build the foundation. This fourth statement is the roof. Together, they create a body cam record that any defense attorney can use to protect you. Now, let me show you exactly how all 4 of these work together in a real traffic stop scenario so you can see the complete picture. You're driving home at 11 at night. An officer pulls you over for a busted taillight. You pull over, turn off the engine, turn on your interior lights, and wait. The officer walks up and asks for license and registration. You hand it over. So far, so good. That part is normal. That part you have to do. Now the officer comes back with your documents. Instead of handing you a fix-it ticket and sending you on your way, he starts asking questions. Where are you coming from tonight? Do you have anything in the car I should know about? Mind if I take a quick look inside? Here's the wrong way. Most drivers say something like, I'm just coming from a friend's house. I don't have anything illegal. Yeah, you can check if you want. 3 sentences. All 3 hurt you. You've given information that can be used against you and suggested you feel guilty by over-explaining and consented to a search. The officer spends the next 20 minutes going through your entire car. He finds an old prescription bottle with someone else's name on it. Now you've got a problem. Here's the right way. You look at the officer and you say clearly and calmly, Officer, what is your legal basis for these additional questions? The officer says he just wants to make sure everything is okay. You say, I understand. I do not consent to any searches. He asks if you've been drinking. And you say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? He pauses. He has no probable cause. He has no reasonable suspicion. He hands you back your documents and tells you that you're free to go. As you take your documents, you say, for the record, I have not consented to any search. You drive away. The whole stop took 4 minutes. That is the difference. 4 words built into a complete strategy. In 3 days, I'm dropping the most requested video on this channel. What to say when a cop claims they smell marijuana. That video gets people arrested every single day because they have no idea what they're allowed to say or do in that moment. Subscribe right now. Let me bring everything together so it locks in. Tactic 1 is to ask for the legal basis out loud and on camera whenever a stop goes beyond the routine. Tactic 2 is to clearly state that you do not consent to any searches, once, calmly, and directly. Tactic 3 is to ask whether you are being detained or free to leave, so the officer has to pick a legal position on camera. Tactic 4 is to state out loud that any compliance you give is under protest and that you have not waived any rights. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the stops that go wrong almost always come down to drivers who talked too much and agreed too fast. The drivers who walked away clean were calm, specific, and they used their words like legal tools. You can do the exact same thing. Hit subscribe right now, smash the like button if this just completely changed how you think about your next traffic stop, and stay safe out there.